welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Christy. I'm a homeschool mom to 3. Today's video is going to be all about campfire curriculums, phonics around the campfire, and reading around the campfire. I just filmed a video all about phonics around the campfire that is one of the most recent releases from Campfire curriculums. I will link that if you're interested in that curriculum. But today's video, I'm going to go into reading around the campfire, which is the next step in Campfire curriculum's reading program. As I mentioned in the other video, this is not a review video. I have not been using this curriculum long enough to really be able to form many thoughts on it. I am just here to give you information, to give you a look inside and kind of see what it's all about. Reading around the campfire is actually a really unique program in the fact that it's not designed or there's not a specified age for it. This curriculum is meant for any child from 1st grade to 12th grade, beginning readers, struggling reader. This curriculum is meant for every child. Glancing through the information on Campfire Curriculum's website, I do see that there are plans to expand upon this program. So right now, they just have Reading Around the Campfire number 1. It looks like they might be doing maybe 3 levels altogether. So what's cool about this curriculum is that Campfire created it to be very open and go, very low to no prep. You don't actually have to purchase any other books. All of the literature and readers are included in the curriculum. They also have designed it to not have to be printed because all of the activity sheets that they have for the children are very interactive. They have the child point a lot. They have the child use their finger a lot. However, they do have an extra pack. It's a separate file that comes with your download. And this is an extension pack. And inside the extension pack, they have extra games, extra activities. They have coloring pages. They also have handwriting sheets. So if you want to add in more handwriting practice, you can do that with the extensions. So with your download, you will receive the curriculum book with all of the lessons in there. You will also receive phonics charts and flashcards. You will also get the readers, like I mentioned before. They're all right in the lesson book. The stories and readers that they use, there are a lot of Aesop's fables, and also I believe there's Velveteen Rabbit is in there as well. Something else that they have included is a links page. So at the bottom of the page, there are QR codes for you to scan, or you can access them from the website as well. And on this page, there's links to videos to help reinforce the lesson. So looking through this curriculum and really reading through the information that they have, this is a very Orton Gillingham based curriculum, but they've also kind of grabbed and pulled from other methods as well and kind of intertwined those in there. The main thing that I'm gathering from this, and the thing that's kind of repeated a lot, is the high emphasis on a whole brain approach to reading. And so a lot of the activities are very methodical in the way that they're placed. Like there's a reason that your child is doing this activity at this time. And it has to do with the brain and making different cross connections to different parts of the brain and really activating all parts of the brain to really help make reading just like this whole brain process. There's a lot of information for parents to read, and they really go into explaining why, the why behind the activities and why they're having you do these activities with your children. The way that Reading Around the Campfire is broken down to, they're broken down into brackets. Each bracket is a 10-step process broken down into 3 different kind of parts. So bracket 1 will have a part A, B, and C, and so on. Part A is steps 1 through 3, and in this bracket, do a lot of cognitive processing with this bracket. Each part of the bracket is a full lesson. In part A, they also usually have a game or activity. In part B, it's steps 4 through 7, and you're going to talk about the highlighted bracket material. There's usually a kinesthetic game of some kind in this one as well. So part C is reading and application. So in this one, they're going to either be reading an easy reader to you, or you're going to be reading a longer story to them, and then there's comprehension activities and different activities that they do with the literature. These steps are fully broken down. If you go to the website, you can read more about the process that they have, but each lesson covers the same 10-step process. So once you kind of do a few lessons, you get into a really good flow. So now I'm going to go into a flip through of the curriculum. I went through the entire curriculum and I put post-it notes, different things to point out to you. So we're going to get into that. It's a little bit of a longer flip through because I want to provide as much detail and look at the inside of this curriculum as I possibly can. So maybe get a beverage now because it's a little bit long, but here we go. So this is the reading around the campfire. This is book 1. And this, like I've mentioned before, is for all ages. It's just meeting where your child's at. Can be used for first graders through 12th graders, for beginning readers, for struggling readers, kids with dyslexia. So this here is the first part of it, and it starts with kind of a phonemic warm-up. Practice and review some sounds in here, and then they kind of go into feeling the sounds, which is really important because they will often reference whether something has a hard sound or a soft sound, a voiced sound or an unvoiced sound. So once you get through all of these phonemic, kind of pre-lessons, we get into kind of the first actual, there's a review on vowels. So here we go. There are different brackets. So bracket 1, part A, it gives you a little bit of information here and some picture study. And then they go into each step. And I've already broke down the steps for you, so I'm not going to reiterate those, but you can kind of see how the steps are laid out. There's a lot of information in these sidebars for parents to read. It is definitely a curriculum that the parent has to read the lesson, I feel like, before you actually sit down with your child to read it and do the lesson with them, because there's just a lot of information. And I think that if you're pausing every 5 seconds to read all of this, it can kind of distract from the lesson itself. So definitely familiarize yourself a little bit with the lesson before you sit down with your child. It gives you some optional things, some ways to adjust it if you have an older student that is more of like a struggling reader that you're going through with this versus like a beginning reader. And so yeah, different ways you can tweak this. They definitely make sure to bold things if there's stuff you don't want to miss. It says do not skip this for any student. So some important things there. So here's an example of one of the games. And so this is kind of like a wordplay game. So you're having a conversation with your child and you're having them change different letters around in their head and kind of play with words a little bit. There are dyslexic notes here if you have a dyslexic child. Then you get into bracket 1, part B. And in this one, the highlights are every word must have a vowel, consonants and vowels, blending and vowels. That's kind of the focus for this one. Here's your pre-lesson parent note. Again, stuff for parents to read. A lot of stuff for parents to read. So this is like a little bit of review over some of these letter teams that they learned at the end of Phonics Around the Campfire. They have some ladder blendings, which I've seen this process done in other curriculums. Sight words, they talk about how some of these words are going to be introduced now. So they do use a mixture of phonics and sight words in this curriculum. However, their sight words are definitely very minimal, I found. It's not a list of 100 words for them to just memorize. It's definitely they focus on phonics and sounding things out, but there are a few sight words. All right, so now I'm going to go into some of these notes, these bookmarks I've done. So this is an example of one of the extensions. So at the end, they will say optional extensions, pick one. So they have different things like learning extensions here. The student can point out the answer instead of writing. So that's what this is over here. They have option 2, coloring in mazes and activities and more. So inside the extension pack, there's more activity sheets and coloring pages. So if you have a kid that really likes that, you can do that. If you have a kinesthetic child who needs to jump around and move their bodies, this is an agility ladder. So they have how to set up this agility ladder, but it's a way to practice their skills that they've learned in a fun, move your body way. I love the kinesthetic activities because I have a very wiggly child that likes to move around. So this is really nice. They have an alternative. If you don't want to do this, play a game like Tetris to explain the concept of today's lesson. So they're all optional. You don't have to do them. You may want to do some one day and then maybe not the next day. It's totally up to you. It's not, like I said, necessary, but definitely helpful. So again, with these worksheets, they're really nice because they don't actually have to write anything if they don't want to or you don't want them to. They can just point. They can answer these orally. They could write on a separate piece of paper. Totally up to you. All right, now we're going into part C. And so this lesson, it says we're learning into action of reading with a little review. So this is where they're actually going to start reading some stories. So this is an example of the first story in this curriculum, Chet the Nut. And so at this point, I believe they've already gone over these sight words, the, to, and was. So these are a combination of stuff that they can sound out, but also their sight words. So these are all in the book. Also, you can print them in a book form if you want to, like I did here. You can print all of the stories and readers and bind them like this. And I did this because I thought it would be fun to just have like the actual little booklet of it. And so it's got all of the stories in this entire curriculum in here in just a smaller format. So he can practice, sitting on the couch. He doesn't need the big curriculum book to do it. He can just practice in this. So that is totally optional. You do not need to print all of these little readers. I wanted to. So those are in the extras. If you want to print them that way, you totally can. So this is, like I said, an example of that first story that they're reading. I love the artwork. I love that the stories aren't like super complex, but they are definitely more complex than something you'd see in like a Bob book or something. This is a sample of a story that you as the parent are going to read them. And this is where they practice spotting different things. So for this one, you're going to read it, and I believe they say to ignore the colors font for now. And then if you have an older student, you can, but with more advanced wording, you can point out each word as you go if possible, allowing the child to follow along. So you're ignoring the colors now, but they will have you like go back and do things with the different color-coded things later. So I love that they include stories for the parent to read to the child because I think that helps test their comprehension. But it also, I think you as a parent reading to them and not just focusing on them having to read to you is important. And I love that they incorporate real stories in there. So they do a lot of Aesop's fables in this curriculum, as well as some other classics, which are really, really nice and all included in here. So now you're on to step 10. So this is learning through reading, which I've talked about all the steps for this course already. So I'm not going to repeat them all, but for this one, they're going to go back into here and they're going to point out at least 5 random words within the prior reading of Aesop's fables and Chet the Nut, whichever one. Looking for vowels of each of the 5 words. And yeah, so all words must have a vowel. So they're going to be able to point some of those out and really see. You can also go back and look at the words with a blue font in the fable you read. Your child should know the letters and their sounds from former instruction. See if your child can decode the blue colored CBC words or recognize them from their sight words. So I love that they're going back to a real text and having them kind of recognize and spot things that they know. So now they do like a mini assessment. And so it's just always kind of checking along the way to make sure that they're progressing before you like move on. They have these for some practice. Obviously, you don't have to have them read every single one. You can select, it says at least 10 of these, or pick at random order to see that they can read them pretty well. These are some sample sentences that they should be able to read as well. And then you move on to bracket 2. Here is another example of like connecting the sides of the brain. So that is like a big thing in this curriculum that they really make sure that is emphasized, is connecting different parts of the brain. With this one, they're gonna find a picture from their book. You're gonna ask questions to try to guess what the picture is of, just like in Phonics Around the Campfire. It's the same activity. This is learning through reading again. So this is where they're gonna go back to the fables and they're gonna go to the orange font and do some kind of activity with that. And they're gonna go back to the blue font, remembering different sight words they're learning. This is really cool because it has some comprehension for the reading, which I love, because sometimes we can get so focused on fluency and actually the act of reading that we forget that our kids need to know what they're reading as well. Another thing I think is cool that they throw in vocabulary as well. So quarreling, and they tell you what it means so that you can kind of teach them some vocabulary. Here's another mini assessment. Okay, so now we're getting into samples of more sight words. I just wanted to point out that they have the previous sight words here and then the ones that they're currently working on there. I also really love that they make a note here to say it may take some time for sight words to make sense to your child, because it's very confusing. It's like, oh, we just have to remember these words. We can't sound them out. It's a lot of memorization, and it says do not expect perfection. This is another example of a game. So here they have the learning extensions here in the extension pack. They have coloring in mazes, compound word charades, or frog leaping blends. So this is again for kind of moving around, playing as a family. It's a family game night, requires at least 3 players. Super fun. Here's the directions to both of those games. All right, let's move on. What is this one? Oh, this is for an example for more advanced students. So they always want to make sure that they're including everyone, and some move faster than others. So they give you kind of that option. Here's another example of a story that the child will read, Chris the Frog. Something else that I did notice about the reading around the campfire versus the phonics. So the Phonics Around the Campfire has a lot of those extra, oh, this animal is this, and gives you facts about animals and stuff. This one doesn't have as much of that added bonus, but they do have some in there. So if you see here, they have a fun science fact here, and they talk about crabs. They talk about learning about different things through stories. There's some more vocabulary. So they do like a little bit of some fun things like that in there, some extras, but it's not as consistent as with phonics. They don't have like a bunch of pages about animals or anything in this one. Here's another example of a game. So Kinnick said grab spoons or cups. So you're gonna write these on the spoons, and you're gonna play that spoon game where you grab things from the table, middle of the table. Larger words. So this is where I'm gonna show you kind of the progress that they're going through. So they have some here that they're going to be doing, and then if the child struggles to read these words, this is normal. Tell them to only read 1 syllable at a time. So they're trying to challenge them here. So they go from, oh, you know these words, like you can try to do these by breaking it down how you've learned. And really decoding that. So it's a lot of decoding practice, but it's also working along with them. Here is another example of a story that you'll read to your child. It's another Aesop fable. Here is the full assessment for book 1. So this has 2 books. So book 1, here's the full assessment. So by the end of book 1, they should be able to read these words pretty easily, and also answer these questions about like unvoiced and voiced and like different things, blends and stuff down there. Then they're going to move on to this box 3, box 4. It tells you what to do if they miss it, what bracket to go back to practice. Here's some more here. And then that. So once they do that, then they'll move on to book 2 in the Reading Around the Campfire. So here's a peek into book 2 of Reading Around the Campfire. So I have not actually printed this one yet because it's a lot of printing and I want to make sure that we actually stick with it. So I am showing you a screen recording of this book 2. Basically it covers bracket 6 through 10. So you start off by reviewing some letters, and then you go through a kind of word game, which I've shown you before. In book 1, they do a similar game where you're playing with words and mixing letters around and that sort of thing. And then it goes into all of the same steps. It literally follows the same flow as before. Every lesson is the same with a little bit of variation, but the same steps. Here's an example of one of the games that they have. This is a Nerf gun game, and so you're going to put some of the words on a wall, and then your child's going to shoot them with the Nerf gun. Super fun. I can tell you right now, my son's going to love that part of the game. And there's a little activity there. Then you're making words again. Here they are having the child become the teacher, which I think is also a really good concept because it shows what they know. Now they're talking about compound words and how to combine different words to make bigger words, longer words. They go over sight words over and over. And here's another story that they're reading, The Muddy Skunk. And then they get to do some discussion with you, some comprehension. They have a little science bonus in there about ants. I think that this next game here about syllables and tug of war is kind of cool. It's a really cool concept and way to teach them reading multiple syllables and how you know when it sounds a certain way. It's pretty cool. Here's another example of a game, and you're going to be bowling with some plastic cups and vowel versus consonant sound. Looks super fun. So now they're going to be reading again. And what's really cool about some of these more advanced readers is that they go over specific words that are in the story and kind of the process of decoding them to kind of give them a refresher and a little bit of help before they actually jump into reading the story. And so this is a story that they're going to be able to read at this point. So here is the full assessment at the end of book 2. So once your child completes reading around the campfire, these are the kinds of words that they'll be reading and the kinds of sentences they'll be reading. So it tells you if your child misses some, which bracket to go back to, that sort of thing. And then at the very end, they're rewarded with being able to read Velveteen Rabbit Story. Here's a look at Reading Around the Campfire's extension pack. So in this pack, you're going to have a parent and child tracker. So this way the student can track their progress in the brackets that they're following. And the parent can also keep track of skills that they may need to work harder on and that sort of thing. There's extra flashcards in here as well as all of the readers, which I had mentioned before. Here are the sight word cards as well as what they're going to be working on. And then you go into the activity sheets. And all of these activity sheets are completely optional. You do not have to use these to be successful with the program. They're just there for that extra reinforcement, extra practice, just ways to work on the skills more with your child. So I hope that you guys found this video helpful. I hope it gave you enough information and enough of a feel of what this curriculum is all about. Also, if you have any further questions about reading around the campfire, leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer those for you.